Story 1. I once sat up in bed in the morning after a night of sleeping in a really awkward position. Without twisting or even moving really fast, my entire back popped all at once. I had to lie back down for like 5 minutes. It was the greatest feeling ever. Story 2. When your nose is crusty and you think you are going to pick out a little booger, but instead you pull out an enormous one, like a stretchy, snotty one that is crusty on both ends. When it finally snaps out of your nose, it is like you have suddenly cleared your entire nasal passage, and suddenly the air feels fresher when you breathe it in. Or like sex or whatever. Story 3. One time in my 45 years, I woke up actually feeling refreshed. I opened my eyes and was ready to take on the day. No yawning, aches, pain, tiredness. Nothing except a pure, fresh feeling. I have been chasing that feeling for nearly 30 years now. Story 4. Farting away a stomach ache. I clenched the railing of the stairs, leaned forward ever so slightly, and gently let the airflow begin. It left with a soft hum in what felt like minutes, eloquently rising and falling melodically. After several seconds, I felt a relief that could only be met with a sigh, a whole body shiver, and the most genuine smile one could muster. I tightened my belt and went about my day feeling like a new man. Story 5. I hit my finger with a hammer and it ballooned up. The nail went purple almost instantly. My entire arm was throbbing for about 4 hours, and I was in so much discomfort. I went to the hospital and the nurse took a hot pin and pierced the fingernail. A giant stream of blood shot out, and the most incredible, draining feeling went from the tip of my finger to my elbow. I have yet to experience anything that euphoric since. Story 6. I had 2 different kinds of cancer a few years ago, and with the chemotherapy and the radiation I felt terrible. Among the most consistent of my complaints was that I was always cold. So I ordered a king-sized electric blanket, turned it up to maximum, folded it in half and slept between the 2 halves. It was beyond awesome. It was like slipping into a hot pocket for a nap. Story 7. Professional earwax removal after a serious 6-month clog. I could hear leaves rustling in the trees from a block away. The pressure release was glorious. Story 8. After a few weeks of regular and intense meditation, I experienced what I believe was some level of ego death. It lasted about a month or 2 while I continued meditating, and it was the happiest and most fulfilling I have ever felt in my life. Story 9. When I was a kid, I was racing with my friends. At one point, I ran as fast as I could, and I remember not being able to feel my legs at all. For some reason, I got a sudden superpower moment, and I was running like never before, not feeling fatigue at all. In that moment, I was convinced I was flying in my 6-year-old brain, looking up at the blue sky, convinced I was a bird. I never felt so free. I was totally in the moment, running a lot further than all my friends, past them. They were all super confused about what I was doing and shouted after me. I snapped out and stopped running in a few seconds. As soon as I stopped, I got the feeling in my legs back. Despite all my friends breathing heavily, I wasn't even breathing differently than normal, nor was I tired. They were super confused when I told them what happened, and we talk about it to this day. I never felt like this before or ever again. It was super strange, and I really don't know how to describe it better than flying. Story 10. Moving after giving birth. You're so uncomfortable for months, and then all of a sudden, you're not waddling anymore. You can bend over, your back doesn't hurt, and you can breathe, and so on. Story 11. This is going to sound weird, but my baby is draining my engorged breast. Engorgement is painful, and the relief when you finally get milked is enormous. Story 12. Had an impacted wisdom tooth that cracked and got infected. My dentist wanted the infection cleared before they extracted it and prescribed me antibiotics and ibuprofen. The pain was excruciating, and ibuprofen did nothing. I was barely able to sleep, and work was horrible. 5 days in, I was playing with the exposed part of the tooth with my tongue, which was super painful, but noticed it was moving a bit. I reached in and was able to actually pull a piece out. A bunch of disgusting pus drained from my swollen gum, but the relief was near instant. The pain immediately went away, and I was nearly in a state of euphoria from the relief. Story 13. I once got a massage from 5 women. One on each hand, both feet, and one on my scalp. Sensory overload. I saw stars and almost passed out. It was an amazing experience. Story 14. After almost 40 years of being on this planet and only having dated one very selfish person, my new boyfriend at the time was laying in bed with me, just touching my face over and over again for like half an hour without trying to escalate it. Just running his fingers over my face as though I was beautiful. It was one of the few times in my life I ever really felt beautiful and loved that way. I miss it. Spending your whole life alone is brutal. Story 15. Coming while having my prostate massaged by my girlfriend. It was like my body went into factory reset. Can be kind of weird at first, but once you experience the sensation, you will definitely want to do it again. Story 16. A decent head massage is definitely number one for me. It's phenomenal. A close second is that big, loud animated stretch you do sometimes when you wake up that seems to release all sorts of stress demons at once. Story 17. The first time my fiancé and I had intercourse was the first time anyone had ever made me finish. I'm just one of those women who has difficulty achieving it without outside help. It was the absolute best feeling I'd felt up to that point. Even still, almost 3 years later, I'm not used to living life this way, and I hope to God it never changes. Story 18. When I was 23, I recall sitting on my kitchen floor against the wall as the sun was shining through my window, heating the left side of my face. I was just lighting a joint to take my first drag, and as I did, I felt a wave of serenity. It hit me that there is absolutely nothing else I could ask for or need in this world. My girlfriend, whom I absolutely adore, is in the living room gaming on my personal computer. My stomach is full, I own my flat, and have no issues, worries, or wants. Suddenly, this serenity turns into unbridled joy I have never felt before in my life. Moments later, I went into the living room, put on some music, made her dance with me, and gave her a deep kiss. About 5 years later, I decided to try ecstasy for the first time because a girl I was seeing had tried it the night before. It honestly scared me. It was the same feeling of joy and happiness, but this time it was cold and empty at the same time, chemical and sleazy, if you will. I realized then why the name and also how so many people get heavily addicted to it. Story 19. I had been suffering from progressively worsening abdominal pain. Started with bloating, then felt tight and pulling like a cramp. I thought I had a slight hernia. It progressed to feeling like I had been kicked in the groin and punched in the stomach at the same time. It became increasingly difficult to ignore. On the last day, after around 2 weeks of progressively worsening pain, it was still very bloated, tight, and pulling with the sensation of being kicked in the groin and punched in the stomach. Additionally, there were severe, sharp, stabbing pains like being sawn in half, eventually turning into severe, writhing pain with no signs of letting up. I had to go to the hospital. It was suspected appendicitis, which meant I was fast-tracked through the waiting room and saw a doctor who focused on my appendix. They needed a computed tomography scan to see properly. To stop me from writhing and basically full-on screaming in delirious pain, they administered morphine. I was so occupied and focused on the abdominal pain that I didn't even feel the cannula go in. Then a sudden warmth spread from my arm, traveling up my shoulder and then to every extremity. A wave of relaxation, and the pain everywhere just went away. I was euphoric at the relief and probably very high. I had never had morphine before or since, or any other opioid, and was told afterward that the morphine dose was on the higher end for my body size as they wanted me super chill for the scan. I can seriously empathize with heroin addicts because of that relief and total loss of care and peaceful mind. I can see how something like that can be so addictive and hard to quit. The condition was duodenitis, a breakdown and inflammation of the lining of the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine just after the stomach where the bile and pancreatic ducts connect. An infection of some kind causes the protective lining to break down, and stomach acid then inflames the area, blocking the ducts that normally neutralize the acid and prevent the immune system from defeating the infection. My infection was so bad I was on intravenous antibiotics and proton pump inhibitors for another 2 weeks before I could eat normally. Since then, I've had it reoccur at least 3 times, but much milder. There's a distinctive feeling of it beginning, during which I self-medicate with a proton pump inhibitor, which stops stomach acid from causing a snowball effect, and it is normally gone within 24 to 36 hours. Story 22, and one of them is going to sound odd. First, a good, full night's sleep on my continuous positive airway pressure machine. I'm still recovering from sleep debt and am also primarily responsible for my 2-year-old at nights, so full nights of sleep are still a rarity. Second, getting tasered, or more specifically, the moment the taser stops. I experienced it voluntarily a couple of weeks ago, and the point that your muscles go from 100% tense to relaxed again is definitely satisfying, even if your entire body aches like you just ran a marathon. Story 21. My grandmother used to tickle me. It's a translation for a gentle, continual caress with fingertips that she usually did on my hands and arms. It's particularly relaxing when done through your hairline. It's unbelievably relaxing and even helps with pain from a migraine or illness. I've learned how to use it to heighten my husband's sexual desire too. When my mother was dying of cancer and heavily sedated in hospice, she opened her eyes to see me when I was finally able to make it to her bedside at the end of the COVID-19 lockdown, and I was caressing her arm. She had been unconscious for 3 days and never regained consciousness again. Story 22. Getting home and sleeping in my own bed after a 3-week global roadshow, with 4 months of nonstop work prior to the roadshow starting. I've never slept so well. Story 23. Not the best, not the most either, since I think the answer might be obvious. But drinking ice-cold water after running laps on a hot summer day is just amazing. Makes your eyes roll back because of how refreshing it is. Story 24. I once somehow expelled all the contents of my sinuses while digging for tonsil stones. It was like vomiting a bottle of maple syrup. It was 10,000 times better than an orgasm. Story 25. Never had it done, but a chiropractor on YouTube does an adjustment called the ring dinger. Basically, it adjusts your neck and entire spine in one shot. The reactions are like a rebirth, but it looks just a little too risky from where I'm sitting. Anyway, I didn't answer the original poster's question, but I'm just saying. Story 26. The sleep after anesthesia. That was the most fulfilling rest of my life. Also stretching after a massage. It's akin to being so relaxed that you could be dead, laughing my ass off. Story 27. I get poison ivy pretty bad. Since I can't scratch, I turn my shower on as hot as possible and run the detachable shower head over the area. It is amazing. Story 28. One time, my wife extracted a chunk of earwax from my ear that was half the size of a quarter. The mix of being able to hear again and the actual feeling of it coming out is something I wish I could experience every day. Haha. Story 29. I had a sore lower back for a few days. Then I was lying on my stomach reading, and I needed to cough. I felt a pop in my lower back. The pain went away instantly, and I felt so good afterward. Story 30. Removing super tight wig after wearing it all day. The tension release on your scalp is unmatched. It's like your head finally takes a deep breath or something. Story 31. Crying at a good story. That, or hearing a song and having it send me into an almost hypnotized frenzy concerning one of my own ideas and needing to furiously take notes before the moment passes and I forget. Story 32. Being alive. A few years ago, I was in a very serious car accident. A car ran a red light and crashed into me with great force, causing me to lose control of my vehicle and flip over. I saw everything in slow motion and felt the fear of death. After what I assume was a few minutes, I managed to get out of the car through the window and stood on my feet. There is nothing more powerful than realizing that I not only survived but also escaped with minor scratches. It was the most powerful feeling I've ever experienced, and I'm thankful for every day. Story 33. When my boyfriend cradles my face in one hand with his other hand threaded lightly through my hair. I've had lots of boyfriends as well as a husband, whom I still love deeply. It just wasn't the right sort of love, but I have never felt anything like this. I call it both hands, and it makes my soul exhale. Story 34. Coming over and over and over. Seriously, the third or fourth one while a Hitachi magic wand vibrates my clitoris and my pussy is clenched onto my husband's penis or his fingers with a butt plug in my rear is just otherworldly. I can't hear. I can't see. I can't think. I can't talk. All I can do is just shake and scream while it rips through me. Story 35. The way I felt after giving birth. I was on a high for weeks. I would drift off to sleep, reliving the moments. Also, the most complete relationship I've ever had was with my 12-month-old. We were both totally in love with each other. Story 36. I once had this allergic reaction that caused a rash on my side and legs. I was supposed to take cool showers, but once I made it very hot, and it was complete and total euphoria, like scratching an itch times 1,000. Story 37. Feeling nothing. And I mean that. I'm still on the tail end of severe to extreme pain, around the clock for years. I had surgery for a fistula that was a secondary issue in all of this, and waking up from anesthesia is literally the single best thing I've ever experienced. No pain, no muscles tightening, nerves firing, and brain being exhausted to the point of giving up. Just nothing. I had a full-on emotional overload and started crying. Completely uncontrolled breakdown, simply because I didn't feel anything. It only lasted for a few minutes, but those were the best minutes of my life. And nothing comes even remotely close.